Welcome to Corrective Consciousness episode 213, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is
Lotus Prince.
And we are continuing on with our review of the Castlevania series. We are on part 4 of our journey into the series, and this the next title on our list is a doozy. Probably one of the best games of all time. It is just amazing. This is also one of the
Judgment, obviously.
This is one of the most loved series of all time to begin with, but amongst all of the titles, included in its pantheon, this is one of the biggest deals. So this is, of course, going to be Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So you may remember that we reviewed and went over the Dracula X game last week, the Rondo of Blood that was on PC Engine. This is actually a direct sequel to that title. Most Castlevania games don't have direct sequels. They tend to jump around in the timeline. You know, the first one is first two are Simon Belmont, of course, and you have Trevor Belmont, who's an ancestor of Simon Belmont, and then you know, you have a remake, which is Super Castlevania 4, and then it jumps forward with Bloodlines, jumps backward with Rondo of Blood. But this one is unique because it kind of takes place, like even the first few moments of Symphony of the Night are a reimagining of the ending of Dracula X.
Yeah, that's one thing I kind of wanted to point out. Is
it's
that,
pretty cool.
Like, Castlevania 2 follows Castlevania 1. It feels like that's how a sequel would be titled. But it doesn't really feel like a sequel. It's just another Castlevania game where you play as Simon. But Symphony of the Night feels like a sequel. Like, this is what happened next.
Yeah, so what ends up happening is Richter defeats Dracula and then disappears from the Earth, and nobody knows where he went, and then Alucard wakes up from his slumber, which he was self-imposed at the end of Castlevania 3. He returns as a main character and one of the most beloved main characters in the franchise as a result. He comes back and is the main character of Symphony of the Night. He is a really cool main character. He's the first main character. He's not even like a side character or anything like that. He's the forefront of the game, and unlike most other games, you know, the main character is a whip user, and he actually can use all kinds of different weapons, and that's what makes him an interesting character in this series. He's a very versatile. He could do a lot of the same things that you would think a vampire should be able to do. You eventually get transformation abilities. You could transform into a wolf or a bat or mist, and eventually become poison gas. You can even upgrade those things as time goes on. But probably the most important thing is that the structure of the game is much different than any of the Castlevanias up until this point.
Yes.
The only thing that it's sort of similar to is Castlevania 2. And that's because it is a more open-ended exploration-style game.
Yeah, it's come to the point where, like, we use the term Metroidvania a lot because Castlevania Symphony of the Night plays, like, the map is structured, and even the in-game map is structured kind of like Metroid. Well, Metroid
Super Metroid.
But Super Metroid.
Super Metroid.
So, yeah, Castlevania is like Metroid, but after Symphony of the Night, a lot of Castlevania games started playing in this style. So Metroidvania comes from the Metroid series and the Castlevania series. So like, Castlevania definitely had a style, but starting in Symphony of the Night, most Castlevania games went to that style.
What's kind of funny about that term is that it was originally meant to describe the specific Castlevanias that were similar to Metroid. And
what
that
kind
was
of
it.
Castlevania is it? It's a Metroidvania.
Yeah, and that was it. And then it got co-opted as a genre later on. But really, it should be all the games that play like Metroid, to be honest, because Castlevania was like basically Symphony of the Night was the first game to popularize that style of gameplay. After Super Metroid, like it was used in a different game after Super Metroid. So, really, the major difference though between Super Metroid and Symphony of the Night, if you want to ask me, like games that more Metroidvanias take after Metroid than they do Symphony of the Night, if you ask me, because in Metroidvanias, it's implied that you have a continuous map full of many sections, typically, that have all kinds of different areas that are kept, that are blocked by different kinds of gates that are either meant to be opened by key items or abilities. So I would say that's the crux of the Metroidvania genre. Super Metroid is all about that. Even the original Metroid is pretty much all about that. But specifically with the way that the map is set up and the progression, and it was really perfected in Super Metroid. And so Castlevania Symphony of the Night has all that stuff, but the major thing that adds to the formula is RPG mechanics and progression.
Oh yeah.
On top of everything. So not only do you have key items that you need to find in order to progress through the castle and get to areas that you weren't able to access before. I need to be able to turn into a bat in order to go into this area, because it's too high, or I need a super jump ability or something like that. I need to be able to turn into mist in order to go through a vent. All of those things are there, just like in Super Metroid. But in this game, there is a luck element to attacking enemies, and they drop all kinds of different items and weapons that you can use. Metroid was never all about that. In fact, most weapons are treated as a key item in Super Metroid.
Yeah, I was going to mention in Metroid, the weapons are the level up system.
Exactly.
Although, you can keep increasing your max health and your max missiles, but those are with item pickups. Whereas in Castlevania, you can get all sorts of drops, like you said, new weapons, but if you kill an enemy, it'll say level up, and you get a little stronger, like you were playing a traditional RPG.
Now, this is also the title that Koji Igarashi really got his prominence on. He took over after he was like the assistant director on this game, and he got known for being like the major Castlevania guy after this. He had a major influence, of course, on how this game was made. He also has always stated that he didn't take much inspiration from Metroid and Super Metroid, which everybody finds very hard to believe, and for good reason.
Especially the map. The map just is Super
The map
Metroid's
just looks like Super Metroid's map. It's the same color and everything. It's set up the same way.
Yeah. It's like when Darksiders came out, and there's like a portal gun that you can get, which, okay, fair enough, but like the portals it shoots are blue and orange. It's like, oh, dude, come on.
He also cites that he didn't take much inspiration from Castlevania 2 either. He actually said that Zelda 2 was his major inspiration for this game, which I can kind of see that. But it's kind of hard to ignore all of the very close similarities to Super Metroid. Yeah. Maybe the original director of the game, took those things in specific. But then again, a lot of times when Japanese devs talk about their inspirations, they tend to not like to outright say them. So maybe it has something to kind of do with that. I'm not really sure. Maybe, Japanese business culture is is mysterious in some ways. But anyway, this game is amazing. It's a lot of fun. It has tons of enemies from previous entries in the series. They have updated versions of them. They have all kinds of enemies that are brand new. They have the bad guy from Kid Dracula is in here. He's actually one of the hardest bad guys in the game. He's one of the bosses. Was it Galamoth or Garamoth?
That I don't know.
Yeah, he's actually one of the hardest in the series. One of the hardest bosses in the series and in this game. But it's really awesome. I mean, you can wield all kinds of different weapons. Like you primarily have swords in the beginning of the game, but then you can also do daggers. You could do maces,
axes. I think
axes, all kinds of different things. Eventually, later on in this kind of branch of Castlevania games, you can even do whips on top of all that stuff. So it's a lot of fun. I really, really, really love this game. I've played this game over many times in this. And what was also cool about this game is that it had several endings, depending on your exploration of the castle and whether you found certain secrets. But the best ending, in order to do that, you needed to get 2 different rings that had like half of a saying on it that went back and forth. You needed to wear those, and you needed to go to the clock tower and use the stopwatch item and at a certain time and open the clock tower. You could talk to Maria there, who is also in the game searching for Richter, who was in Dracula X as well. So, but now she's an adult. So, if you did that, you got an item where you could see Richter ends up being like the big boss during the first part of that game, and normally you would kill him, but if you had the secret item from that, which were these goggles, you could see that he was being possessed, and you could fight the apparition that was inhabiting him, named Shaft. He's a dark priest named Shaft. And if you did that, you unlocked the inverted castle, which was an entire second half of the game that was normally not there. That was one of the most
shocking things of its time. Like, it's one thing to unlock a secret dungeon, but like the second half of the game was a secret unlock. That is. Now, can you imagine if they pulled that shit in like Ocarina of Time, like Adult Link's, like a secret unlock? Like, that'd be insane.
Yeah. So what was really cool about this was that you had an entire like harder section of the game that had its own unique bosses and everything. I mean, it had less gates that would stop you, because you would have a lot of the abilities up until that point.
Just go, yeah.
Yeah, but it had its own unique bosses and a lot of its own unique enemies. Of course, the environments were the same, but flipped upside down. But it was still really, really neat and fun. And of course, you could get to Dracula at the end, who is also a cakewalk by the time you get to him.
And because, honestly, not one of my favorite monster forms of him. It's like
yeah. It's kind of anticlimactic by that point, because a lot of the other bosses in the inverted castle are a lot of fun to fight, and he is not. You could just murder him real easy. But overall, a really, really freaking fun game, and it changed the trajectory of the series for the remainder of its duration, and also changed the landscape of action gaming, just because it helped popularize this format.
I was gonna say, even now there are really cool indie Metroidvanias like Hollow Knight that just did gangbusters, like Blasphemous, that looks kind of like Symphony of the Night, sort of a little bit.
Yeah.
Like just people are like Ori and the Blind Forest, like very different aesthetics, but people are coming to really love this genre.
These games would not exist without Symphony of the Night. It's just plain and simple. You even have some of the earlier games that tried to do it, like Shadow Complex, which was a lot of fun. I really liked
Shadow Complex was
Complex.
interesting because there was. I mean, you still only moved on a 2D plane, but there were enemies in the background that could shoot.
Yeah, it's like 3D-ish elements.
Yeah, it was like faux 3D. It was a clever twist at the time.
I love that
it's
game.
Still kind of like games still don't really do that. Shadow Complex is, I don't know if it's unique, but it's uncommon in that it does that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Also, it can't be understated. The music is unusual for this series, but also really awesome and fun. By what is it? Michiru Yamane.
Oh, the same composer.
Yeah. This the music in this is very jazzy. Most of the time, or hard rocky, and it's a lot different than the typical Castlevania soundtrack, but it's still amazing and iconic.
You know what it kind of makes me think of, honestly, is like the difference between System Shock 1 and System Shock 2's music. Like old Castlevania, the music is like, this is the music for the level. It's video game music, and in Symphony of the Night, it's more like ambient.
Yeah,
it's just like something to listen to while you're playing this. It's not like level 1's theme, go, you know?
Yeah, there really is a smooth jazz with a gothic feel to it, kind of vibe that you get from a lot of the tracks in this series, in this game in particular, and I just love it. It's unique, unusual, and really good. And it's never been really replicated in the series after this. If you've never played or heard of this game, certainly get on it. It is still it's a game that's so good it's timeless.
And it's on PS3's PSN, isn't it?
PS4.
PS4 as well.
Yeah, so actually, there are a lot of different versions of this game at this point. It's been ported around.
Saturn, I think, is not the best version, but it has some unique content like Maria mode and stuff like that.
Yeah, so one thing I was going to mention is that there is a Richter mode in the original version. You could play as like Richter has his own mode, but he has no upgrades or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't have anything that he could really do, and his story there's no real story to it or anything like that. You could just play as him and get from
it's
boss
like
to boss.
Resident Evil Zero's Wesker mode.
Yeah,
it's not. You have a Wesker skin.
Yeah,
play the regular
exactly
game.
It. But the Saturn version added a Maria mode, as well as two other sections of the game that are honestly not very well developed, and there's only like a couple enemies in them.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Well, it's like Saturn Resident Evil. Like, just to say that you've seen it. Look at these weird little extras.
It also is very technologically inferior to the PlayStation version. So even though it has this extra content, it's not worth it because like the PlayStation version is superior in almost every other way.
Well, and like we've already seen, Saturn isn't the best system at dealing with 3D. And again, as I had heard mentioned in a GDQ, despite Castlevania Symphony of the Night looking like a 2D game, it's really not. It has a lot of 3D elements to it.
It does.
And the Saturn
a lot of the enemies
can only go so far with that.
Yeah. So, like, going along with that, a lot of the transparencies are dithered, they're not as clean or good-looking. The resolution is off, so, like, the pixels are uneven and noticeably so. So some of the graphics look scrunched in it. There's a lot of slowdown in the game, and the new sections were basically an afterthought that weren't very good.
Look, we got levels for the Saturn version.
The Maria mode is honestly super half-baked as well. Yeah. So, to be honest, it's not really worth it. But after that, there was a Xbox 360 version, which actually kind of has a bad audio because they had to super compress it for the time.
Oh, that's right. It was like Redbook on PS1, wasn't it?
Yeah, so what ended up happening is when they ported it to the 360, it was a download, an Xbox Live Arcade title.
Yeah,
And at the time, they had strict limits on how big those games could be, and they even raised them for Symphony of the Night because it was like a big deal for that system to get that game because it, the cachet that it comes with it to have it. But even with that, they still had to compress everything, and it doesn't sound as good. So don't get that version either. The PSP version is excellent. So I mentioned that Dracula X has a port and remake on the PSP called the Dracula X Chronicles. It also includes Symphony of the Night with a brand new translation. Oh, I should also mention the amount of internet humor and memes that have come from the original translation of this game.
Yeah, what is a man, a miserable pile of secrets, but enough talk have at you.
Yeah. The introduction of the game in particular has one of the most awkward readings and or translations of a story that I've ever seen.
And not only that, but also
iconically so though.
Well, yeah. Well, it's like Resident Evil. It's iconic now, but also like a weird echo filter on every character. Yeah. Like it sounds like they're talking in a big hallway, which I guess they kind of are, but it just feels kind of weird. And also, everyone's reading their lines theatrically. Like, what is
like very Shakespearean? Very Shakespearean.
Die, monster! You do not belong in this world. It feels like someone's acting off of their script. It's pretty entertaining.
So the PSP version actually has a clean translation. It's all fixed up, but it's not as iconic. So I kind of prefer the messed up one that you can't really understand.
Well, that's kind of what happens when you just get it in your head. It's like Star Fox 64.
Yeah.
Hey Einstein, I'm on your side. It's like, how do they know who Einstein is? So then on the 3DS. He goes, hey, genius, I'm on your side, which makes way more sense. But they're like, yeah, but I miss Einstein from when I was a kid, though. And it's like, nobody's happy.
But, this PSP version is excellent otherwise. It doesn't have the extra areas from the Saturn version, but it does have a revamped Maria mode that is much better, that also includes, like, her magical friend abilities, which... it's just a lot of fun. This version also has the cleaned up translation, so like the story actually makes a lot more sense. So if that's important to you, it's a great version. That version was eventually brought over to the PS4 with Castlevania Requiem, which is another collection of Dracula X and Symphony of the Night. Completely worth it. If you want to play Symphony of the Night now, just get the PS4 collection, this Requiem collection, because it's excellent. It's the best version of the game. It's really, really good. I was very excited that it had made it to the PS4 because, a game locked to the PSP is always a disappointment.
Although, by the way, we have mentioned this a couple times on previous podcasts, but for the sake of mentioning Castlevania in the Castlevania episode, you want to talk a little bit about the nature of the PS1 CD?
Oh yeah, so another cool thing about this is if you threw the PlayStation 1 game, actually a lot of games did this.
I gotta test this with more stuff.
Lots of games did it. In fact, you could do it with Twisted Metal. Like most games, what would happen if you skipped past the first track? If you stuck it into a CD player, the first track would be like game data, but then the rest of the tracks would be the actual soundtracks of those games a lot of the time. So like in Twisted Metal, you could listen to the whole Twisted Metal soundtrack. You didn't need to buy a separate soundtrack because it was right there.
You know what that means, by the way? Like,
what's that?
I gotta do this for Tobal number 1 because that soundtrack is legitimately amazing.
Well, not every game did that, so keep that in mind. But some of them
I'll have to
did.
try it at least.
And a lot of a lot of PC Engine and like Sega CD games also did this as well. But with this game, instead of getting like the actual music from the game, it had Alucard actually giving you a PSA about how
Yeah.
you shouldn't be playing the first track of the CD. But you probably won't listen to me anyway.
Yeah, he's like
And
doing it in character.
but there is a hidden like unique song that isn't in the game. That's really
Crazy.
good.
I
Yeah.
love stuff like that. Like I want to see if some of like the weirder games like like Shadow Tower. Like that game's kind of hard to get. Do they pull any weird shit? Like I gotta see this.
Oh yeah, all kinds of games on the CD format used to do that. I even remember that like Sonic, like the a lot of Dreamcast games had hidden stuff if you put it in your PC.
Well,
You could.
that's what I want to do is put in a PC and just go to Media Player and see what happens.
Well, there were even like free wallpapers and stuff like that in
Oh, that's cool.
on GD-ROMs, like just straight up like all kinds of like fan material used to be on
I
there
gotta
as
try
well.
this with Carrier.
Yeah.
Remember
the ring, the
Carrier?
game.
I
Yeah.
gotta try this with Illbleed.
Egg. But yeah. Castlevania Symphony of the Night, like chef's kiss of a game, amazing. It's one of those games that's going to be on 100 best games of all time lists. Like
Yeah,
for
like
sure.
Ocarina of Time, Symphony of the Night. Like everybody loves Symphony of the Everybody still loves Symphony of the Night. Like at this
And
point,
it's really that good.
Well, I was gonna say at this point, Metroidvanias have evolved, but like it's not like, oh, they have quality of life improvements and Symphony of the Night doesn't. Like maybe they do to a degree, but Symphony of the Night holds up, and like
Yeah.
for one of the first of its kind, that's very very impressive.
Not only that, but like there, it is there's all it invented the warp points in the
Yeah.
Metroidvania as well, which games still use.
One of the only things I would say doesn't hold up is that it gives you a hard game over. Like a lot of Metroidvanias like respawn you somewhere because it's like, well, you're just
It's
gonna reload the
minor,
game
though.
anyway. Yeah, so like it's not really a game over. It's just an inconvenient set of loading screens. So Symphony of the Night still does a hard game over if you die, but like that's a minor complaint, especially in an era where the concept of never gaming over was like didn't exist. Like I
Yeah.
remember like Dark Souls or well Demon Souls was like, oh, this is the hardest game you'll ever play, but like there was never a permadeath state. So like when you lose a game, you get a game over. So it's not like Symphony of the Night is faulted for that. It's just like maybe the one thing about the game that hasn't aged perfectly. Today, they would just drop the loading screen and respawn you at your latest save point instead of kicking you to the title screen, then you have to load the save point. But
Yeah.
otherwise, that game holds up.
Also, I want to also like go over kind of why this game is so much fun. Like the environments are really fun and unique and cool looking.
Yeah,
But
they really are.
also the enemies in the game are so varied and unique, and a lot of them reference all kinds of stuff.
And some
Like
of them are fucked up. Like I keep mentioning
Yeah.
Grand Falloon because it's like my
Yeah.
favorite name, even though every other game calls it Legion. But that boss is fucked up. It's just like this giant orb of like bodies, and you have
Yeah.
to hack away at the orb, and you realize that you're not actually hurting it. But when you hit it, like corpses just fall off of it, which is pretty gross. And when
and
you,
they're all screaming while it's happening.
and not only that, but some of them hit the ground and then just shamble at you like zombies because they are. And when you break off enough corpses, it reveals like a gross like nerve underneath
Nerve,
it. It's
yeah.
like, this is hideous.
Yeah, I love that boss battle. It's a lot of fun. There's also a Beelzebub, which is like it summons all these flies at you.
Well, yeah, Beelzebub is Lord of the Flies. Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of
He was
references to
in Ghouls and
literature.
Ghosts, too. Oh,
Yeah,
literature, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, there
You
is.
know what threw me actually about literature? You
What's
know how
up?
we always talk about Frankenstein's monster?
Mhm.
Well, in the 90s, I think there was still. You know how. I don't know what it was about the 90s because Dracula and Frankenstein have existed for like 100 years, even then.
Sure.
So I don't know how the fuck nobody knew this, but you know how like the word vampire and Dracula were sometimes interchangeable. Look out, it's a Dracula.
It's a Dracula.
Or like, a lot of people call it Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein. Look, it's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing Symphony of the Night, when they do the end credits roll and they go through all the bosses, they call it the creature.
They do. Actually,
remember...
when you hit him, it says the creature as well, too.
Okay. Yeah. But like, I remember seeing like, the creature, what could that be? It doesn't even have a name. It's just called the creature. It's amazing. And then I saw Frankenstein's monster, and I was like, oh. But then I realized, oh yeah, it doesn't have a name, does it? It's the monster.
That's actually kind of one of the points of the book. Is like, he creates this thing and then rejects it, and like.
Yeah, Frankenstein's a piece of shit.
Yeah. He is basically a really bad deadbeat father, and that's kind of the whole point of the series of the book, is that like the creature is actually much more human than the actual scientist.
He like loses his humanity and just focuses solely on his work. Like, I made a thing, and it's like, yeah, you did fucking acknowledge it.
Yeah, and all it wants to be is treated with as a living thing and treated with reverence from its creator, and he shuns it and casts it off, and that's the whole point of the Frankenstein book, and it it's really interesting if you think about it that way. He's just a deadbeat dad. He's an asshole, but anyway, so he doesn't even name it. He doesn't even name it because like he doesn't acknowledge it as a legitimate accomplishment. Even though he sees it as an aberration. Yeah, he sees it as an aberration, even though it's an intelligent being that he created, is going around and has complex thought. But anyway, as opposed to, Frankenstein's monster in media, who's always basically a zombie.
And by the way, I should mention, Junji Ito has done a Frankenstein manga, and it looks like how the book describes it. It does not look like the Boris Karloff version. So he's got he's got this gross, creepy zombie, like milky white eyes, which really are horrific. But like, which is the whole point. Like, Frankenstein's horrified by his creation, but like, there is a sympathy to it, though.
Yeah. I recommend either that version if you want like a visual version of it, or you could check out Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein from the 90s. It's a lot more... Was that the one that
was called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein?
Yes.
It's a lot more accurate. Not perfectly accurate to the book. It's kind of like the Keanu Reeves Dracula is like also not perfectly accurate, but like as good as it's gonna get.
In terms of like movie adaptations, they are the most accurate.
Yeah, that's as good as it's gonna get. They have a whole weird cholera subplot. They're like, oh, okay, but like it's still mostly accurate.
Yeah. So that's one where Robert De Niro is the monster, which is an interesting choice.
Forgot that.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say you also have like one of the fun things is like you'll be going around and you'll just see something crazy like a gigantic skull, like a gigantic skull is just there floating and trying to kill you.
Yep.
There is a beautiful naked woman inside of a rose, but
it's like a regular enemy.
Yeah, just crazy stuff.
It's like a I just
like
think
a mandrake, but
it makes me think of like a human attracting version of something you see in nature. Like my favorite example of this is the anglerfish. It has the light to attract smaller fish. But my favorite example of this was in Devil May Cry 4, where you see these like glowing, floating naked women, and Dante's like, oh, cool. Or, well, Nero first. Nero's like, oh, this is interesting, but the women don't exist. They're like the anglers of this giant demon toad. You're like, oh, fuck, it's the scariest thing when you first
They're basically like sirens or whatever,
No, but they're not. They're like the angler bait on an actual creature. Like, that's terrifying.
Yeah, there are like weird monsterized versions of the companions from the Wizard of Oz. Like you have the Tin Man, which is like a steam robot that tries to kill you with an axe. The Scarecrow, who is an impaled scarecrow that hops around on its like pike.
It's so fucked up.
Yeah, which is also a reference to Vlad the Impaler.
Sure.
And then the Cowardly Lion is like a knight he's like a knight in armor. Like a big knight in armor with a lion head. And that's all in the library, so that's like really cool.
Oh, that's appropriate.
I should also mention that there's also this is has an iconic shopkeeper named the Librarian in this game as well, who will be on your side for a price, is what they always say.
That's so good.
Yeah, it's just like
It reminds me
really
of the
cool.
Demon Merchant. I mean, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We'll save this for next week, maybe. But it reminds me of the Demon Merchant from Castlevania 64.
Oh yeah,
Like he's obviously a demon, like clearly. But he's like, I don't care. I'll sell you shit. Give me money. And I'm like, all right.
This is also the first time that they really acknowledged that, like the castle is like a living thing. In Castlevania, in part of the lore, that's why it's always different every time you visit it. It is constantly
I just figured they
shifting and
rebuilt it
changing.
differently because you kept fucking breaking it in every game.
Well, that's true too, but it's supposed to be a reflection of Dracula. It's a living, breathing thing that constantly changes.
Can you
Also,
imagine
another
how
one.
Simon Belmont must have felt? Like, he plays 3 games. Oh, no, Trevor's in the third one, but like 2 games.
Yeah.
Like, within a few years, the castle's just back. Like, are you kidding me?
There's also a boss battle where you fight all of your companions from Castlevania 3. You fight
That's amazing.
a 32-bit version of Trevor or Ralph, Sypha
Ralph.
and
Grant.
and Grant Dynasty. Yeah.
That's really cool.
So they are all like in much better splendor than what they were, of course, when
Sypha
when
is not so badly rendered that the American Manual thought she was an old man with a beard.
Yeah, so it's really cool what they did with this game. It also has a pretty compelling story too. I mean, at its core, it's a son that does not want to be associated with his father, and he has to stop him.
That's
really
the beauty
cool.
of it. Like, Alucard's a vampire, but he's like, dude, look, I know. Like Dracula's awful.
Yeah, and
he's
it
the
even
boss
has
of
like
100 games.
it even has a major subplot with his mother, who was a human who got killed because she was mixing medicine in a cauldron. They thought she was a witch.
I didn't realize that the Castlevania, like the Netflix Castlevania, I didn't realize that came from somewhere. I thought that was just a new idea.
Oh no! That's been around ever since Symphony of the Night.
That's cool.
That subplot. So, actually, the anime is quite accurate to the source material for Castlevania 3 and Symphony of the Night.
It has swearing, so 0 out of 10.
But yeah, Alucard is an awesome character. He does return eventually into the series, but we since this was such an important entry in the series, we had to give it its own kind of thing, because it's just that good.
It defined a genre. Like Super Metroid did it first, but somebody that
it
really
solidified
set
it.
In. Yeah,
it solidified it. I mean, there's one thing for pioneering, but it's also for popularizing something is also very important. And,
there's a reason that every game like Castlevania Symphony of the Night is not called a Metroid-like.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of something that's stuck, because the term was popularized by, not invented by, Jeremy Parish, because he used that phrase to talk about the Game Boy Advance titles, which we'll get to eventually, but and the DS titles, but it has since become like that's what you call this type of game. There's no other way to describe it, because nothing else sticks. So there's a reason for it. It's basically the top evolution of a 2D action game. I can't think of anything that is a higher evolution of it, because it's no longer stages tied to arcade style.
Yep. Yeah, level 1, go all the way to the right until you
structure.
can't anymore, and then there's a boss, you know?
Yeah, I mean, NES was as great as the NES was for the video gaming industry. A lot of the games, if they weren't ports of arcade games, played like arcade games, and had continues and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
like Streets of Rage, like you have a limited number of continues, even though you've already paid $50 for the game and you don't need to like pay to continue playing. Why not have infinite continues? Because nobody thought of that, because that's just how games were back then.
Exactly. This is, a step towards a long-form game with complex connections and complex puzzle solving and lots of things to do in it. Just lots of things to do, and it continues on to this day. We'll get to this eventually, but Bloodstained is a reflection of that. I love the Bloodstained games. So anyway, we're gonna have to move on to fan stuff then.
Sure. So for comments, Gentleman Puka just mentions really quick, Metal Gear Solid 5 is my favorite. I mean,
it's very good.
It plays the best, yeah.
It has the best gameplay of the series. In fact, the gameplay just gets better over time. I would say with Metal Gear.
Mm-hmm.
4 has good gameplay too. It just has a weird story. It's a very odd story.
Yeah.
But 5 has some heavy stuff in it too.
Yeah, I've still to this day I've only played Phantom Pain, or no, I've only played Ground Zeroes.
Oh yeah,
and like
Phantom Pain is worth it.
Yeah, if you just want to beat Ground Zeroes, the whole thing's like literally 10 minutes long, but it is like
it's
by far the heaviest shit that Metal Gear Solid has done, which is saying a lot considering that 3 exists.
Yeah.
Okay, so School Filmer says, I'm glad that PS4 owners can finally play Cuphead. I've yet to give it a try on the Switch myself. And also mentions, the Breath of the Wild recipe in the John Boyne novel is actually a pretty funny piece of news, considering how many hours I sank into the game and its DLC.
Yeah.
And then Living Corpse had several comments. So there's competitive players in the fighting game community who play using a mouse and keyboard. Yeah, my mind melted from hearing that. Like seeing Cthulhu would drive you mad. Yeah, I can't imagine that.
You know what? Some people even have joystick setups. I know it sounds crazy, but joystick setups that use up, down, left, and right arrows from a keyboard. They'll use like mechanical versions of that, and it makes sense to a degree because you're really only hitting those inputs. So I can totally understand it, and I think it's kind of a reflection of the emulation scene from back in the day, because that's how you would play Super Nintendo games if you didn't have a joystick to hook up.
I remember that. Like my brother and I would be at each end of a keyboard, one of us using WASD, the other using the arrow keys, and that's how we would play competitive games with each other. Like we had no choice because we didn't have controllers.
Yeah, I could totally see using WASD or up, down, left, and right as a way of hitting inputs accurately. Well, just accurately, because you don't have any in betweens with those. They're just off or on. That's it.
Yep. That's cool. Living Corpse also says, I just learned Skullgirls is drawn in 1440p and downscaled to 720. There were plans to have HD update for the PC version, but they ran out of funding. Now I'm depressed. Yeah, you know what that makes me think of is Final Fantasy IX, like its backgrounds. I think we're actually in HD, and you could find 720 versions of those gorgeous backgrounds online, but they had to be downscaled for the PS1 because the PS1 could only do 480.
I think the PC and Switch versions of 9 have those fully in their full glory.
If they do, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
He also says, a Splinter Cell TV show? We were supposed to have a Splinter Cell movie since the first game. The first game is a teaser for a live-action movie that never came to be. Splinter Cell is like the one video game movie I feel you have to be actively trying to ruin to make it bad, because it isn't taking place in a fantasy or sci-fi setting with deep lore concepts. It's supposed to be some guy with night vision goggles spying on bad guys in a real-world setting.
Fair enough. It has a very realistic plot too.
Also, Shin Godzilla puts a lampshade on all of those too big to exist buzzkills. It has that scene where the leaders of Japan say the creature can't walk on land, and then they get a report that it is. Later, they talk about how they don't know what powers it has, or like as there is not enough oxygen or food to make the energy for a creature that size. And one lady says, except for nuclear power, and they think she's joking, but you know Godzilla is nuclear powered.
Yeah.
And later show photos of barrels of nuclear waste dumped into the ocean that have huge bite marks on them. So like, huh. And then
well, Shin Godzilla is a big commentary on how ineffective government is.
Yeah. And then fuck your square cube law. Ironically, being resistant to missiles might be closer to reality than fiction. He's a deep sea monster, meaning he has intense internal pressure pushing outward to deal with the constant crushing deep seawater at all times. The intense pressure for most explosives is not nothing, but it's only a fraction of a second. I'm just sick of hearing every science video going on about, oh, he's too big. No shit, Sherlock, get to the cool stuff, and then cover nothing else. See you next week.
Yeah.
I only saw one video cover how his atomic breath might work. And, you know, I'm also sick of that one guy in the theater loudly saying it's unrealistic. Like, whatever. Let's let people enjoy their kaiju movies.
I completely agree. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, like, you don't go to, like, the 23rd Godzilla movie and go, oh, this is unrealistic.
I mean, like, a Megazord could never happen, but I still want to see it.
Yeah. It says, I consider kaiju movies to be Japan's modern-day yokai folklore, just as many consider comics to be modern-day Greek gods.
Sure.
And then one last comment from Living Corpse. I wouldn't say I met him, but I did see Robert Patrick at Comic-Con a few years back. I said, you're my favorite villain, the T-1000, and he waved back. And then
have you seen this boy?
That he chased Living Corpse for like 30 minutes without changing expression.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, I've seen this boy. And Living Corpse is like, oh no, and he runs away. And then that red-haired kid from Salute Your Shorts tries playing bodyguard for like a second.
You know what?
Patrick pushes him aside.
At least you didn't say to him, you were my favorite villain, Kokoshuko.
What, from Double Dragon?
Yeah.
I loved you wearing sunglasses and having half a medallion, and you could cast your shadow out of yourself.
I loved it when you were in that movie with Andy Dick and like the one guy from Iron Chef America and
yeah, that was
Melissa
him.
Milano.
The guy who was Zero in John Wick 3. That was the fucking Jimmy from. Oh,
that guy's awesome. By the way, that guy is awesome. But
he is awesome. But like he was one of the Double Dragons. What?
I have a rare DVD, a rare official DVD of this movie. Nice. It's actually a collector's item. Like you can't really find it.
All right.
Funny. Yeah.
And then Dracologist has a couple of comments. Windows should take naming ideas from Capcom Windows. Revelations, Home Edition, Windows Zero Gaiden. I said Capcom Windows, but should take naming ideas from Capcom.
I know
Zero Gaiden, Office Edition. And then it says, Baki, like Baki the Grappler, is the fighting equivalent of watching a destruction derby made entirely by big rig bulldozers and monster trucks. Yeah, not wrong. Also, the main character's dad is basically Akuma. Yeah, as crazy as Baki and his opponents are, his fucking dad. It's like, whoa. And then he says, Burger Time was something we really enjoyed on Commodore 64. And then as for famous people Dracologist has met, I can remember only one, namely... I'm probably going to say this wrong. It looks like Tarja, but I'm going to guess Tarja. Taranan, the ex-lead singer of Nightwish. And that is fucking amazing. I would love to meet her. She, like, was the entire band. Their instruments are amazing, but, like, her singing just carried album after album. She has this operatic style. Meeting her would be the craziest thing. That's so cool. And then finally, Sabrina Hengel says, damn, meeting Suda51 and Crispin Freeman sounds awesome.
Suda was very nice.
Yeah, with Crispin Freeman, it was really more like, we're in a line to get autographs. Hey, how you doing? Cool, thank you. So, like, it was cool that I met him, but we didn't chat or anything. Suda51, there was a little more opportunity for that, but we had to use a translator.
Yeah, it was just a cool moment where he was just walking around. I was like, nobody knows who I am here.
Yeah,
and then
just
me.
Yeah, I wouldn't have recognized like his face. Like, so that was really cool. And then finally for our question, Living Corpse. So what is some cool anatomy in fiction? For example, Legion from the Gamera series. Her blood is not liquid like ours, but a gas. She lacks muscles and instead uses pressurized gases to move her limbs.
Oh, neat.
That's really cool. In a series known to have blue, red, purple, pink, and green blood, hers stands out. Or, did you know, one version of Godzilla actually has two brains? One for controlling the upper half of his body and one for the lower half. When the second brain got destroyed, he was paralyzed from the waist down and unable to stand up. That's fucking crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, so weird. I mean, this is low-hanging fruit, but I kind of like the acid blood from Alien. It's just like, you get punished for fighting back. You'd have to beat them with like blunt force trauma, which is extremely hard to do.
Well, have you watched Resurrection recently?
Not recently, but I've seen it.
So I always like that, like, a group of aliens actually kill one of the xenomorphs in order to escape their prison. I thought that was, like, brilliant.
Yeah, that's really clever.
They're like, we know we have acid blood, so one of us has gotta go.
That actually kind of reminds me.
It's like molecular acid, too. It's, like, really scary.
No, but that also kind of reminds me of, like, the reverse of this, where in Alien versus Predator, they realize that the aliens are immune to their own acidic blood, so the Predator just like makes like he just grabs like the top of the alien's skull because it's long and thin and tosses it to the person he's with, just so she can use it as a shield for acid because she can use the alien's body as an immunity to the alien.
Good.
Like, yeah, I was like, you know what? All right.
That's pretty.
And
That's pretty
I
all
think
right.
he like took its tail, like ripped its tail off, and made it into like a makeshift spear. I'm like, you know what? That's pretty good. I'm other anatomy though, like, off the top of my head, that's pretty tough.
I always like Dead Space. What those enemies turn into. I mean, it's not literature, but
and their weaknesses are their limbs, so you have to like program your brain to how to fight these things.
They really wanted to take the turn the third person shooter around by having you not aim for the head all the time, which is pretty cool.
Oh, you know what's kind of interesting? Did you ever play, I actually haven't either, but I've seen it played. Have you ever played Echo the Dolphin, The Tides of Time? Sequel? Do you remember what the future dolphins were like?
No, I never really got very far.
Their fins and their dorsal fin are like way bigger, and they could fly, apparently because they have these like helium sacs in the future. Like this is what dolphins evolved into. So they just straight up fly. It's like, whoa. Like they look basically like regular dolphins, except their flippers and the dorsal fin are much more prominent. So they're almost like these, like they almost look like if you looked at them from the bottom, you might mistake them for like a ray or something, like in the sky. They're like almost like gliding birds. It's bizarre.
That's really crazy.
Yeah, like just this is what someone came up with. It's just interesting.
I have an example. I have an example. I know this is kind of like funny that I'm bringing this up, but in Animorphs, I always liked the description of the Andalites and a lot of the other aliens in the series.
They absorb nutrients through their hoofs.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that, and they have like kind of like a scorpion tail. They're like centaurs that don't have mouths.
Yeah, they have slits where their mouths would be, but they don't communicate with them.
Yeah, they're telepathic, right?
Yes. And they have eye stalks.
Yeah, they have eye stalks, and they have like kind of like a furry tail, but that ends with a like well,
they're all like fur. They're blue fur. Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought that was really neat, and they also have the Hork-Bajor.
They have those sick blades that are easily used to kill people, but they really are supposed to be using them to carve bark off of trees because that's what they eat.
Yeah, weren't they like big centipede-like creatures, if I remember right?
Those were the Taxons.
The Taxons, yeah.
I remember this from the very first book. It's like, these are the Hork-Bajor. They look terrifying, but they're really not. They were just enslaved by the bad guys, but normally they're herbivores. And then you see the Taxons. Taxons are evil.
They're terrifying.
Well, yeah, giant centipedes that are actually evil. Fuck this.
Yeah, and they're friends of the slugs. They're like willing.
Yeah, the Yerks.
Yeah, the Yerks.
Even the Yerks were, this isn't unique anatomy, but the way they worked was clever, where they like go into your ear and onto your brain, and they like manipulate themselves so they kind of like fill in like the wrinkles and the cracks of your brain, and just fit in that way.
I just love like the whole thought that they were intelligent, but basically were like trapped on their planet, and they had to like inhabit like more and more intelligent creatures to gain abilities in order to like leave their planet.
But the sad thing was they couldn't. Like what happened was some nice guy was like, let's give him a break, and they gave them some bodies to work with.
It's like an obvious like prime directive no.
They gave them some volunteers.
That's
you can
right.
Take our bodies. We can kind of make this work, and then they like enslaved those people and got bigger and bigger. So like
that's right.
The guy who came up with that nice idea, like his name is in the history books. It's like, the John Smith technique. Like never do this. Like helping out the Yerks, and now they're like this intergalactic threat. Like it was a nice idea, but like it's like literally a galactic fuck up. It was no good.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about like a series of young adult like novels, I guess is what you could call them. But like they were really imaginative for the time.
They were very well thought out, and they were supposed to depict like the horrors of war, like kiddie version. So like adults might not find them edgy.
People actually died.
Oh yeah, no, like kids found them edgy. Like this goes farther than I thought it would, and adults would be like, "Huh, that's pretty hardcore for a kid book," like that kind of thing. Like there is some shit in those books.
Like even one of the main characters gets stuck in one of his transformations very early on.
I think it's the first
or second book. Yeah.
Not only that, but the first book, they realize their assistant principal is like one of the possessed, and
they can't do anything about it.
Not only that, but like they know it's not really him talking, but just seeing and hearing your assistant principal saying about you, kill them and bring back their heads for identification. It's like, oh fuck, like I'm not sticking around for this.
Yeah, that was a cool series. It's unfortunate that like we don't have any like modern incarnation of it. Like there were like there was a Nickelodeon show.
They are all available online for free though, like officially, legitimately for free.
Oh wow, there was a Nickelodeon show which I never really watched.
I've seen a clip; it's not good.
Yeah, and there
was a crappy Game Boy Color game, I think.
A game. That's what I remember.
A PS1 game.
Yeah, but
they could probably do better with
it
now, but it's no longer in vogue because it's like the series is over. It's long over.
I recommend reading the Andalite Chronicles on its own. Is still
it's
really
very good. It's very good.
Yeah, that was like a prequel book, but it was like ended up being one of the best books in the series.
Yeah, partly because it's a standalone.
Yeah, it's really.
Oh
good.
No, it was a fascinating concept. Do you remember I mean, we're really deviating from answering this question right now, but like, do you remember the concept of zero space? It's like hyperspace in Star Wars.
I forget.
It's zero space, like it's hyperspace. But the thing is, at one point, the way the kids transform, they were like asking about the logistics of it. And they were like, oh yeah, well when you transform, like your body, like its guts and everything, are just kind of sent to zero space. It's like virtually another dimension. So they're just kind of hanging out there.
You know what that's like?
But real quick though, they were just like, but you travel through zero space. It's hyperspace, right? And it's like, yeah. And it's like, well, if a ship is ever going hyperspeed, couldn't that theoretically mean that they just blow through our guts and then our human forms are like gone forever? And it's like, well, in theory, yes, that could happen, but space is so fucking big, there's no way. But they were still like after learning that.
So, that is similar. That the whole concept is similar to the way the original Captain Marvel works.
Yeah. The kid body versus the adult body.
Well, you're talking about
like Shazam.
You're talking about Shazam. I'm talking about the Marvel Captain Marvel.
Okay, Marvel Captain Marvel.
Marvel Captain Marvel switches with places with Rick Jones, who is the kid that Bruce Banner was trying to save when he got turned into the Hulk.
Oh wow.
So yeah, but Rick Jones is like one. It's really funny. He's actually one of the most important Marvel characters, and they completely ignore him in the cinematic universe.
Nice.
But he basically became a superhero by switching places with Captain Marvel, and he's like in this like subspace dimension, like still talking to him telepathically.
Huh.
But he does exist in that space, and he goes back and forth there. And there were some really cool like developments of that. Like there's like an entire universe that they're switching back and forth between. So it was pretty cool. What they did with that. But yeah, like that whole concept is very similar to that.
Actually, one thing, this is a semi-answer for an anime. I don't remember what the book was called, unfortunately, but it was another thing I read in like middle school or early high school or something. But the main character had gotten into this like horrific car accident, and like he had to get like his neck replaced. He had like a metal neck because he got royally fucked up. So it turns out he actually could still get up and walk around and everything after that, but he has this very conspicuous artificial neck. And this played into the story because like he was all depressed and he's like, well, now look at me. But he gets like a letter asking him to come to this like this Eastern European country, and he's like, I got this insanely good job for you. I'll tell you what the job is when you get here, but trust me, I have an absurd amount of money I'm willing to pay you. And it gets like that's a really weird way of asking for a job, and I don't know how you found me, but okay, I'll look into this, I guess. And it turns out this is a vampire book, and as he's making his way through the country, before he even meets the guy, like a vampire just attacks him, and he's like, oh fuck, and he like what do I do, a vampire? And the vampire, of course, the first thing it does is bite his neck, and it like breaks its fangs on his neck, and he's like, that's not supposed to happen. And then the guy manages to like kill the vampire, and he's like, vampires exist, that's a thing. And it turns out that like the person who sent in the letter is like, oh well, that's just it, I want to hire you to like hunt vampires. Sure. And you are like the ideal vampire hunter because they can't bite you. And it's like, oh, nice. What was really amusing about that book though was that it got to a point where the main character became really sick and twisted, and he captured a vampire and would bring him victims to bite to make other vampires so he could hunt those, and it became this like sick cycle of making money. And eventually the employer caught on, and the employer himself was a vampire, but he's like a first or second generation vampire, and he wanted to get rid of like the second or third like tertiary vampires because they're like more animalistic. And he's like, well, you've caught on to my plan, and you know who I am now, and also you're fucking me over, so I'm gonna kill you now. And the guy's like, no, you can't do that. The whole reason you hired me was that you can't bite me. And the guy's like, whatever, I don't have to bite you. And he pulls out a gun, and the main character's like, oh fuck, and he just like run away. It's amazing. It was just like JoJo, where it's like, I'm a vampire in the middle of the night, what are you gonna do? And he pulls out like a Tommy gun and just opens fire and like in front of everybody. It's like, whoa, it was amazing.
It's like that scene in Rocketeer where like they have this like big strong like muscle man who like is their like the Nazis have like this big strong muscle man as their enforcer. It's like, easy Frankenstein, you're not bulletproof. And he's like, you got me there.
Yeah. I love little things like that. Like vampires, why can't they use guns? Like nothing's stopping them. Like you
they
can't
do in
bite
Blade.
me. You're one attack. It's like, dude, really?
They do in Blade and Underworld.
Yeah, Underworld is quite different. You're not going to just walk up and bite a werewolf, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, Underworld, I like Underworld 1 and 3. 2 is okay. 4 is forgettable. 5 is like, all right, that's enough. 1 holds up, and 3,
I feel like
people like it or hate it, but I like it.
I feel like that's one of those universes that would work better as a series than like a bunch of diminishing returns. It would work better as like a TV series, like instead of.
By the way, you know what never sat right with me? In the first Underworld movie, there are those 3 like mega coffins of the.
I've actually never seen any of them.
Oh, okay, because there are these 3 like super vampire elders, and the way they get closer to doing immortality is that one of them will rule for like several hundred years and then take a super hibernation, and another one will take over and rule for several hundred years. So like Victor is the guy in the first movie, and he's like the villain of that movie. After he's dealt with Marcus, the one who was supposed to be ruling in that era but wasn't, comes out. Like, Victor is arguably the most powerful vampire, but Marcus is the first vampire, and he's got like bat features. But there's this third coffin with a C on it, and like, who's this elder? And they just never come back to him. There's just a third elder. Like, who's ruling the vampire clan? I don't fucking know. We're just not doing like that. That's bothered me ever since I saw it. Well, not ever since I saw the first movie, because like, you're not going to show all three elders. But after the second movie, I'm like, well, I know what's coming next. But then the third movie was a
fireworks
prequel.
factory that they never arrive at.
Yeah, like the third movie was a prequel, so I'm like, okay, well that makes sense. And we just never came back, and it just kind of bugs me. Who was that guy? I don't know. It was not like Victor says we leapfrog through time, but it's not a 2-person operation. It's 3 apparently, and we never see the third one. It just bugs me a bit.
Maybe it's Quadrula-chan.
So I hope that answered your your anatomy question, Livy Corpse.
Maybe it's a Quadrula-chan for Facophon.
It probably is. Turns out the third vampire elder is adorable.
All right. Did you have anything else before we wrap up our episode here?
Probably not off the top of my head, unless you want to talk about the weird shit the Pillarmen can do in JoJo Part 2.
Oh, the veins! Ugh.
That was one of them. That was fucking gross. Santana's all weird and stretchy. Wamu, like, uses his horn to detect heat, and he's got, like, sand blasting powers somehow.
Who's the one that just cries uncontrollably?
That's AC/DC with the veins.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I love it when you see it, because JoJo punches him, and he just starts, like, weeping and sobbing, and it's like, this is not what I expected from the final boss. And then he's like, oh, no, sorry, like, I've learned to do that, because I used to get so angry, I would literally start boiling and flipping out, and, like, I've trained myself to cry so as to not do that, and you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah,
so this is going to be tough, isn't it?
Veins are, like...
Yeah, he shoots his own boiling blood at you, it's disgusting.
And also can just exist as a brain outside of the body, like, a brain with veins.
My favorite part, though, was the way the fight started, because they've been going through this training sequence for chapters and chapters, and it's like your final test will be to test your ripple powers by fighting, like, on a bed of spikes, and you're going to have to fight your teacher. Can you do it? So Joseph approaches the arena. Teacher's already dead. AC/DC killed him. He's just standing there. It's like, no, you're fighting me, the guy you've been training to fight. It's like, oh no. It's like, that's the scariest thing.
AC/DC was like the pinnacle of that whole thing. He's
like, I hope you're good enough to kill your teacher, because I was, and you have to kill me. It's like, oh dear.
I love
that's
part 2.
So scary.
Part 2's the best. I love it. All right. Well, we will end the show there. We want to thank all of our fans who contributed questions and also the comments. You guys are rocking lately. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own via the YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It really does help. And it helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesdays for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in our lives. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on pretty much everything.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, and getting in conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
Alright, everybody, we will catch you on Tuesday. See you then.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.